And so I'll just take my jacket off and let it all go. I'm grateful to be here. I think, so my background, I've worked in human resources in corporate settings for about 20 years. My two other partners have been in education, so they're both professors. And so a lot of the stuff we're going to share comes from my practical experience as well as their, they've had lots of leadership experience as well, but it's also from the academic side of things. So I'll start off with a question. We're going to turn that just to make sure it's easier to see. What is the purpose of organizations? What do you think? Why do organizations exist?
To organize.
To organize, okay?
Add structure.
Add structure to things. Coordinate.
Accomplish goals.
Accomplish goals, okay? To what end?
It's ongoing.
It's ongoing. It's always, always evolving. I think one of the key things of why organizations exist is to create value. Right? So if you think about any organization, right, it creates value, or it should. Otherwise, why does it exist? Now, the next question is, for whom do organizations create value?
Well, the county should for its citizens.
Okay, so citizens, which would be customers, right? Broadly, go ahead.
I'd say also employees.
Employees, absolutely. Do you guys get value out of work? Hopefully it's more than just a paycheck, right? But your organization exists to bring you value. There's all sorts of other organizations that you're part of in your life. Some that are formal and some that are informal, and they create value. Now, who decides what's valuable? The individual, the person receiving it, right? And so that can make value kind of a little subjective. Or it's something that you have to actually ask those people. So broadly, we talk about people within an organization, people who have an interest in the outcomes of what that organization does. We generally refer to them as stakeholders, right? So we want to create value for all of the stakeholders. So who or what sustains organizations and the value they create?
Governing body.
Okay, so the people who oversee it, they make sure that we're staying on track. Who else? Employees, absolutely. It should be everybody in that organization who is striving to create value and keep that organization headed in the direction where it can continue to create value for all the shareholders, right? All the stakeholders. So for purposes of the county, that would be citizens, it would be employees, even
Elected officials.
Elected officials. There's all sorts of people that the county creates value for. So I want you to keep this in mind as we go through this today. We're going to talk about leadership, but we're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about what we call little L leadership, which is that leadership is simply the ability to influence people. That can be for good things or bad things. But all of you have the ability to influence. So I want to share a story. I moved here. I'd lived in Utah in the past, and then I moved away for 12 years. And I just moved back this summer. And I spent the last almost 10 years in San Antonio. So This is a typical picture of San Antonio. Let's see a few things here. So first of all, growing grass in San Antonio, it just doesn't work.
It's so humid, why not?
It's too hot. It's too hot. So it's just hot all the time. So we were coming home we actually got stuck at the middle school in the middle of a storm. And the storms there, you get buckets of rain all at once, and the wind is blowing, and there was hail. And as we're driving home, this is about 3 blocks from our house, this tree is blocking the road. And we go by, and I'm the kind of guy who talks to people in the line at the grocery store, and my wife doesn't like that, but I do. And as we drove by, I said to myself, I want to go, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know who the neighbor, my dog uses his lawn frequently. But I don't really know him. But I want to help. So we get home, the electricity's out, there's nothing really to do. So I go up the street, and I grab another neighbor who I know has a chainsaw. His name's Cody. I said, Cody, let's go and see if we can help cut up this guy's tree. So we go over there, and by the time we get there, there's about 15 to 20 people kind of just gathered around and gawking at this tree. And we walk up, and I say, who's the owner of the house? And the guy, I think it's this guy here actually was the owner of the house. And I said, hey, I don't know anything about cutting up trees, but we have a chainsaw, and I think I brought some loppers and a handsaw and some gloves, and my 13-year-old son and my neighbor, and I said, well, we'd like to help. And then I started talking to some of the people around us, and I said, does anybody have a chainsaw? Anybody have any saws? And one guy said, I got a chainsaw. And I said, would you be willing to go home and get it? So he goes and gets his chainsaw, right? So 40 minutes later, everybody just kind of converged. I asked my son about this experience yesterday, and I said, do you remember that? He said, yeah. I said, what did you think about it? He said, it was annoying because there were so many people, I didn't feel like I could really help out. Everybody just self-organized. They figured out what they needed to do. They jumped in, and within 40 minutes, we had this cleared and had everything. Again, this is the owner of the house. His name's Al. I didn't know him. I hadn't met him before. He had sent me a text after that because he wanted to send a thank you to us. So I went back in my phone yesterday and found his phone number and said, because I didn't have any pictures. I said, hey, do you have any pictures of this? And so he sent me a bunch of pictures. Anyways, so this is what we call small L leadership. Right? What was the organization? Loosely. It was a neighborhood, right? Neighborhoods can provide all sorts of different functions. One of them is to help your neighbors, right? To provide a community where you can help each other out. I had no authority. I just saw something that needed to be done and thought, maybe I could help out. And we went, and did it create value? For whom? For whom did it create value? Everybody who was involved there. Even people that were just driving by, because there was only a narrow gap where one car could get by. And so we were creating value for all the neighbors, those who got involved. Al, who sent me these pictures, he was so excited to send them to me yesterday. And he said, I'm so grateful that you helped out. I was so stressed about what I was going to do about this. I had no idea what to do. So lots of value was created, right, within that organization. But it came about because somebody saw a need and was able to mobilize people in a process where they knew what to do, they had the resources to do it, and they could make a difference. So, our definition of leadership is that leadership is not about a position that you hold, but it's a type of work. It's a work of mobilizing people in a process of action, learning, and change to improve the long-term viability and vitality of organizations in 3 ways. So number 1, the people that are involved in it have an increase in purpose and meaning in their lives. Number 2, the organization, the purpose of that organization is strengthened. So the reason why that organization exists grows, right? So again, going back to the neighborhood, the purpose of it wasn't being met. I've never seen any of those people. It's so hot in Texas all of the time. Everybody stays inside. So I've never met any of those people. And productivity is strengthened. And this has to do with increasing the amount of value we make. So any thoughts or comments on this? It's kind of wordy, right? But I want you to understand the main thing, though, is that leadership is a process that you can follow. Now, why are we focusing on leadership in Wasatch County? What do you think?
We can always improve.
We can always improve, right? Right. So I think that it's not just about teaching people how to be better at the top, right? This is about building a culture. This is about you. So as we went through that leadership definition, there's nothing in that you cannot do, right? Can you mobilize people around you? Can you see problems and see ideas of ways to make things better? You probably see them all the time. This is about helping you to see that you have the power to go and mobilize people in making things better within your organization. So, culture determines the results of an organization and its impact on employees and the communities that they serve. Organizations and individuals that are not deliberate about pursuing a specific culture leave the outcomes of their work and their lives to chance. If you don't say, these are my operating principles, this is how I'm going to do things, then that concept of entropy, who knows what entropy means?
Entropy means everything basically falls apart and becomes disorganized.
Yeah, so entropy is a physics term that says it's the nature of things that once you put energy within a system, then that system decays. So if you are not actively putting energy into the organizations that you're a part of to try and keep them focused on the purpose for which they, for why they exist, then those organizations start to decay. And so who within the organization has the responsibility to keep those organizations going? It's everybody, right? You have a strong impact. It's not just leaders within an organization, but it's everybody within an organization that makes it what it is. So Wasatch County, we want to create common expectations, common language, common experience for all employees. And we've been doing these leadership classes within the county, and probably the most common thing we hear of what is challenging is it's growth. We continue to grow. And that creates a lot of challenges, right? So if we don't respond by growing ourselves and changing the way we do things, then the organization will have a difficult time dealing with all of the added stress. All right, so when we use this, our definition of leadership, we're going to talk about 3 different analogies. The soul, heart, and mind of leadership. So first, actually, Don, can you guys help me pass that out? Okay. The soul of leadership has to do with the fact that leadership has an inherent opportunity and obligation to do good. Leadership is always moral. That's our belief. What do you think we mean by that? Leadership is always a moral work. What does it mean to be moral? To have values. Okay, so it's not about selfishness, right? So those morals, right? Now, moral work says we seek to do good. We try and make things better. And this is the purpose of leadership, to try and make things better. It strengthens people, purpose, and productivity. Again, if the reason that an organization exists is to create value, then we must understand what's valuable to the people we serve, to employees, to all the stakeholders. So, the soul of leadership has to do with seeking to do good by doing what is right because it is right, even when it is hard. So, in what we just shared there is this cycle of virtue. The cycle of virtue, I'll explain this. The cycle of virtue says, first, going back to this idea that you need to deliberately create a culture, first is you need to establish what we call the moral context. We need to understand where are we now and what are the values that we need to emphasize so that we have an organization that does good, that creates value for all the stakeholders. So, establishing values and expectations. How many of you guys have seen some kind of joke about corporate values? Right? It's kind of a joke. I remember I worked for an employer, and they were a manufacturer, and they had this thing on the wall that says, "We build trust." And I thought, no, you don't. You do not. And it was true. And people looked at it and they laughed because it was not something that was a real value at that company. So this is the difficulty of upholding a moral environment, is that one, you have to determine what it is, and then you have to choose to follow those values. So again, going back to that, our little tagline, right? Doing what's right because it's right, even when it's hard. When organizations do that, they send a signal to everybody in that organization that, no, this is real. And sometimes that means taking action against employees who violate those things. Sometimes that means extra effort or extra resources, including money, in order to say, no, we're going to do what we said we were going to do because that's a value. That's a universal moral value, is telling the truth, being honest, upholding what we say. Okay, what happens when you do that? Well, it creates virtue within the organization. What is virtue? Virtue is the power to do good. It increases your ability to do good. So, a personal example, I was talking about my belly here, right? Now, I've gained and lost my entire body weight at least once or twice in my life. I love dieting, and then I love gaining it all back. And every time I do it, I go through this. What do I do is I set my values and expectations. I say, this is the kind of food I'm going to eat in this increments of time and in this amount. And guess what? When I'm tempted to do something that is outside of that, and I say, no, I've already set my boundaries. I'm not going to cross them. It increases my power to do it the next time. And it keeps going. And then I see the results from that, and I go, oh, this is really good. And I continue to learn about my body and how it reacts to things, right? But what happens when I go, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna go outside of my boundaries, and I'm just gonna have this thing this one, so I'm just gonna have pizza, because I mean, everybody else is eating pizza here, right? I'm not on a diet now. I will be. I lose power, right? I lose power. Now, I share that example because I want you guys to see how this happens in your lives and how it happens in organizations. And that can be from not keeping commitments to people, again, within the organization, without the organization, not keeping those commitments, and letting things slide, and it can turn into much worse. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so in your packets, excuse me, in your packets there is on the last page, there are 3 small case studies. We're going to do this first one. What I want you to do is get with 2, 3, 4, 5 of you and read through this case study. I'll read it real quick. You work on a maintenance crew that travels to different local sites. Coworkers on your crew often clock in, then take 1 to 2 hours to get to their work site. You suspect that management is aware of this, but you don't see them doing anything about it. You hear one of the crew members say that they allow this flexibility because everyone knows we don't get paid enough. So, on that paper, there are some questions at the top, such as, what are the reasons this situation came to be? What would you do? Who would be involved? Right? So I want you in groups to talk about this. How did this come to be? Think about what we just talked about with the soul of leadership and the cycle of virtue, and use that to decide what you might do in this situation. So let's just take 5 minutes. Ready to go. There's no place in Heber Valley that's not established.
Oh, you don't sell, you go ahead and set your
Talk to the supervisor, find out if it is culture. If it is not, maybe sometimes that is, look at the questions. Whether the culture
Get your work done, but take your time.
But I think you also have to find they give you a good team, so you have both sides basically decide. There's also build yourself up. Which is okay. So then, that's the next question, what we can do. Let's discuss. We have our ideas why it's happening. What we can do.
He is a good writer.
My thing is you never surrender to the lowest common. Because the lowest common denominator is something. So it's like, no, we're always looking at I just going through. Really allow an hour or 2 hours to find out what that really is acceptable, or is that?
I need a raise, because I don't know myself. I like it.
Who's gonna be involved? Try to rally the troops for the coworkers who aren't.
Yes. Both my coworkers.
Say there are some
And things like that.
All right, take about 30 seconds to finish up your thoughts.
I don't know, so say the word. Let's get there. Probably start with, I got this. Something
I want a successful change for group.
What would happen if we did that?
I just want to be a successful taxpayer
Okay. So, let's discuss. Were there any extras?
Yeah, we got some extras.
We got some extras. Okay. So what do you think? What questions should we answer first? First one?
Yeah.
What are the reasons this situation came to be? What do you think?
Starting with one.
We figured one of the
We raise
reasons
hands in this class.
this situation came to be was because maybe they don't feel it's valued. Maybe the employees don't feel it's valued, hence the statement, because everyone knows we don't get paid enough.
Okay, so there's obviously something where the employees feel like, oh, this isn't fair anyways.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay?
Yeah, so, yeah, we were thinking it, and it probably stemmed from one person kind of starting that and then others jumping in.
Okay. So it's kind of a slowly, somebody kind of said, oh, we're gonna go to McDonald's, or we're going inside. Don't drive through. Okay?
They
Okay?
can do it, we can do it, kind
Yep.
of attitude.
Yeah. Okay? What else?
Two things. One, I think that a lot of times, a lot of us are followers. And if somebody steps up and leads, even in a negative direction, we will follow. I've seen this driving down the road, nobody's speeding, and then all of a sudden, one car will pass the car, and then all of a sudden, the 10 cars behind will start passing with the idea,
Yeah.
well, if he did it, I can do it, right?
Yeah.
And then but I also think that,
That's why highway patrolmen, like, they have like 3 or 4 of them, the speed traps, right? So they can get everybody in that.
they get all the votes, yeah, the followers as well as the leader, right? So, and then the other thing, I think, this expresses a situation where management is not talking to their people and having frequent communication
Yeah.
with them. They're kind of been left alone and management's just kind of acquiesced to do as you choose fit.
Yeah, so, what else?
Our group thought that the people were not getting paid enough because of poor leadership. Too much at the top and the people below were getting screwed. And so we felt it was poor leadership and the people.
I don't think that's exactly what we said. I
So this is a little serfdom, right? And this is just, it's a feudal system, and they're just saying, yeah, sorry, I was gonna do an Irish accent of some kind. We get nothing for what we're doing.
Oh, were you gonna, someone there was talking first. Were you guys? No? Okay. Well, my thought to this was, giving the benefit of the doubt, I think there's just unclear expectations.
Yeah,
Because maybe for some of those people, they were allowed by management, but I'm making an assumption one way or the other. But there's unclear expectations. If there are different values, that's a different issue
Yeah.
in itself, but.
yeah, I would say one of the reasons this came about is likely there is either no values and expectations that have been established, or if there are, they're just hanging on the wall and people laugh at them, right? Because, right, the cycle of virtue. Okay, so what would you do?
I'd go to my supervisor and ask, what's the expectation?
Yeah,
What is, how long should it take us to get to work? What is the expectation of, the work day?
okay,
And just kind of get it clear cut and, depending on the supervisor too, would be the next step after
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But, just having that clear expectation of, what are we supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
What is the idea? How long should it take to get to work? What should we do while we're at work?
Do you think that there is somebody, a stakeholder within this organization somewhere that this would bother,
Absolutely.
So even if that supervisor, and even if his manager's like, it's fine, right? When it comes down to it, somebody's gonna say, well, this is stealing, this is fraudulent, this is not appropriate, right? Unless there is really some kind of like, at our workplace, we value you being away from your family and we pay you for it. So relax, have a good time, take breaks.
I was gonna say, with that though, it can't end in just that one conversation, because then the expectation's only between those two people, like,
Yeah.
you need to communicate that
Yeah.
with, if it's company-wide or program-wide or whatever that case may be.
Yeah.
So that clear expectation is understood by everyone, and not just,
Right.
because then you just perpetuate the problem. Well,
Yeah.
I understand now, so I'm good, but.
Yep. Okay, so let's say you are the manager over this department. You're new there, and you just find out that this is happening. What do you do?
Go to work with all at the same time.
I think you start off with some of what, hey, tell me how you guys feel about working here. It's okay. It's all right. We don't get paid a lot.
I think there's value in both having, in a group setting as well as individuals.
Yeah.
And getting to know people as individuals, and then, further than that, team building to build trust within each other and with management, and then to set guidelines of, of that expectation
Yeah,
as a manager.
right. So, creating that, so everybody understands. There's kind of a common, right? This is how you build culture. You say, okay, this is how we're gonna do things. Okay. Let's skip to how would a successful change improve people, purpose, and productivity. So if we, let's say that we followed the cycle of virtue and we said, we're going to establish values and expectations. And we're gonna follow them. We're gonna strive to follow them. And maybe that doesn't just mean that we are going to bring the hammer down on everybody who doesn't follow this. That's not what this means. It means that within this organization, these employees feel like they're not receiving the value that they want out of it. Now, there could be multiple reasons for that feeling, right? Could be a false feeling. Could be their parents' fault. That's normally who I blame. But creating expectations that we're going to make this a better place to work, but also an expectation that when you're here, you're going to work, and that's what we do as an organization. We create value, right? Okay, so successful change, people, purpose, productivity. So what would it look like, a change that would help the individuals, help the people?
Everybody would be on the same playing field. They
Okay.
would feel like one person is being favored. Everybody's treated equal.
Yeah,
Everybody has to abide by the same standards, guidelines, expectations.
okay. Yeah, so everybody has that same standard expectation. So how does that help the individual?
And maybe they feel like if they're not being picked on, that
Okay.
Their values.
their values the same.
Yeah, everybody's kind of has the same expectations and they're doing the same things. It would probably be a relief to some of them. Some people maybe really enjoy the work and the day goes faster when they're busy. For others, it may be the feeling of guilt goes away, right? They feel, I mean, the best days I have at work are the days that I'm busy the entire time, right?
Goes by so much faster.
Yeah, it goes by so much faster. I feel great when I go home. I feel like, hey, I did a ton of great things. Okay, well, we'll skip the rest for time's sake. But so what might happen if we do nothing in this situation?
Stays the same.
Stays the same.
Entropy.
Entropy, right? Could get worse and worse. Now, I share this because I've seen this happen in organizations where in fact, in one organization where I was trying to help correct this, one guy came up to me and he said, hey, you have to understand, I've worked here for like 12 years, and when I started, they told me, these are your break times that you clock out for, and these are the break times you don't clock out for. That's how he was onboarded, right? He worked on a graveyard shift, and there wasn't a lot of supervision there, and so, yeah, they'd take an extra hour or two, or if you were having a bad day, go take a nap in your car, and that was just expected. That was just fun. Okay. All right. So now some of you guys brought up some of the things we'll talk about in the heart of leadership. The heart of leadership. So tell me a few things about a great leader that you've worked for.
They're willing to get their hands dirty. They get in and work.
They're willing to, how does that make you feel about them when they're willing to work?
Respect it.
You respect them.
That they're not putting all the work on you and making you, and then taking the glory.
Okay. Okay. Good.
They're willing to take the time to teach.
They're willing to teach. What does that communicate?
That they care about your future in the organization.
Yeah, they care about you, they care about the organization. The heart of leadership is that leadership is always personal. It's a personal relationship that you have with that individual. It lifts and strengthens people. And we use a framework we call the LIVE framework, which starts off with a word we don't say at work. Love, right? Love, this is not romantic love. This is the type of love that says, I feel accepted. I feel like I belong. I feel like people notice me. Inspiration is about feeling connected to the purpose of the organization. and that the work you do is meaningful. Vitality has to do with the overall health of the individual. The things that give you energy, your mental and emotional health, your physical health, all those things, you know this, right? You don't sleep well because you're stressed about something. Sometimes you're kind of worthless at work the next day. When there are other issues that are going on in your life, it makes it really difficult. And we as leaders and organizations have a responsibility to help people, to lift them up when they're having those difficult times. Expression. Expression is about having voice and the opportunity to create. Right? So if you say, what are you most proud of at work that you've accomplished? Well, if you do the same thing day after day after day, it can be hard to point to, right? But when you have those opportunities to say, well, I do the same thing, but I have seen ways that we can improve, and I've had the opportunity to share that and make improvements within my organization. Those are the things that help people to thrive. Okay, so here's our little Venn diagram. So again, love is about attention, appreciation, acts of kindness, and acceptance. Inspiration is the work that you do helps fulfill the purpose of the organization and helps you to learn and grow. Vitality is about that personal energy, physical and emotional health, and also contributing to the energy of those around you. Expression is that opportunity to share ideas, contribute to making meaningful decisions, improvements, and innovations, and doing what you do best. So, next case study. You are a supervisor over a department of 4 people. You notice that Rachel, a newer employee in your department, is anybody here named Rachel? Okay, good. I wanted to make sure. A newer employee in the department seems a little reserved and isn't interacting socially with the rest of the group. She was hired to receive paperwork from customers and do data entry. She's pretty good at it. In her 3rd week on the job, she asked to talk with you. Rachel shares that she has some computer programming skills and is very interested in learning more. She has some ideas on how to automate some of the work in the department. You just want employees to do their routine and get work done. The other employees on the team feel the same way. They have a steady rhythm they follow, and they get feisty about change. However, you've just gone through some amazing leadership training. You recognize that this is an opportunity to apply what you've learned. Okay, again, take 5 minutes, talk about what you would do here.
Give it to the data entry.
Hey, what are the reasons for the situation? Not your fault.
Don Woods down.
Get inspired at these leadership trainings. Get better.
In a nutshell, this is how people perceive me. It's gonna take my job. Anyway, that's what we do. The upward side of it.
I just
And yes, change is partnership. Work together when you get through.
Like, if you are doing it, but you should be
And then that's
examining. We're not.
But that is all,
Some reason it's not working in you help them
Be involved.
maybe they weren't for this.
And everybody here is
Or help them
trying to figure it.
to find out how it isn't just about making them square.
Right, yeah. I like
Because that one would be like.
Yeah, by doing
All right, let's take a minute and finish up your thoughts.
Because when you're the leader, you inspire to try something different. You only have to be to do this. You can't step into this with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It's like, no, we're gonna do this. And then only if you absolutely have to redirect. Leaders. If it's finally, if you're at the door, you're always coming in.
Okay.
It's different. You know what you mean.
All right. So tell me, first, somebody describe the situation. What's going on? What do you guys see is going on here?
I've spoken too much, but there's a new addition.
Yeah.
Everyone else has been there for a while, they're in a routine, all of a sudden there's this new addition that's potentially not shaking it up, but providing an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, so generally, there's a process of assimilation within a new environment that takes anywhere from 6 months to a year. And when you're new in an environment, you see things that other people do not see. And so she comes in and she goes, this is ridiculous that we're doing it this way, right? There's a better way to do this. I've seen it. I've been to the mountaintop. And I've seen we have to fill things out on paper, right? They can do it electronically, and then I don't have to do either one of these things. Okay, so why is this situation? Why does this situation exist?
I'll keep telling you, but
Okay.
everybody else, please tell me, I'm talking too much.
Go ahead, leader, go.
No, I'm not.
Lead on.
We don't. Well, again, I think people get into a routine and get comfortable,
Yeah.
and as long as there's no issues arising and you're meeting whatever your value or whatever that standard is, I think human nature, you sometimes like to settle, right?
Yeah.
Most people, not everybody.
Yeah.
And so the new person has a different perspective. also will say, you don't just change for change's sake, or just because someone who comes in, because maybe they don't know all the context and all
Yeah.
that, so you have to evaluate.
Yeah, they generally don't know everything that goes on, and this will take us into our next one, right?
Okay.
You need to, no, that's fine, but you need to understand the entire context of what it is you're doing. So, we don't know in this situation, right, but what do? You are the supervisor, you're sitting there and Rachel says, full of excitement, can I do something? Can I make some changes?
You ask her what kind of changes and how she's gonna, like,
Okay.
get her perspective, what she's talking about, don't just give her carte blanche to go do
Sure.
whatever.
Yep. Yep, so you have some inquiry to ask, to make, right? You have some questions to ask and say, okay, what is it that you want to change? What's your objective? What does the end result look like? How much time will this take? What is it that we want to focus on?
I think encouraging that excitement too, because she's not collaborating well with her peers just yet, she's fairly new. And, you know, she found something that could potentially be of value to her coworkers.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, you know, being excited about your work.
Yeah.
Is huge.
So let's go back to the framework and think about, you're new here, right? And you bring up, she's not gelling with her coworkers. Why? I don't know. You know, we threw out a bunch of different things in here, but you could have said, well, the first thing I'm gonna do is we're gonna have a department get together. It's not even addressing the issue, that very issue, right? But part of it is Rachel she's not feeling the love. Love in our department. So this attention, appreciation, acts of kindness and acceptance. And so the supervisor may say, what kind of culture am I creating in this department that is making it so she doesn't feel like she belongs? What is it that I need to do to encourage my employees within this department to have a culture that is accepting, that is encouraging, right? So that's one. Second, maybe she needs to understand, well, maybe there's a reason we do it this way. Maybe that the form is, or the complexity of what we're doing is such is that you sit with the customer and you go through it and you explain things, and 70% of the time we change something on here because they didn't understand. And it's just too complex due to the nature of the client we're working with, right? Maybe she just doesn't have the context, and so she just needs to feel the inspiration of, you're not just receiving paperwork and doing data entry. You're interacting with that person when you get the paperwork, and you are helping them in that process, right? Vitality, actually, I don't see anything about vitality, except for just that, like, feeling a part of things. Or the excitement that can come from the expression, right? This is really focused on, can I make meaningful decisions and improvements and innovations? What other thoughts you guys have on this?
I think that the hardest part about this situation, if what Rachel said was something we wanted to move forward with, was not ruffling feathers, because if it's not broken, don't fix it, is what everyone says a lot. So I don't, how would you make everyone not feel like the way I was doing it isn't good enough, or why are you trying to change it? I think it's just really, really hard for people to change.
Right.
They get mad.
Yeah, they do.
If you're there to serve the customer, their best interest should be in place, so we should be doing everything. That's what our core value should be, to make it easier for the customer and make it for them. So that's how you have to sell it to the team, right? And this is what we're here for, this is why we're doing it.
Yeah. So it wasn't this situation, but it was kind of like, I inherited a department that, I just set up a department where we did everything digital. And we did that deliberately to make it easier on everybody, because we thought it added more value. And we made sure that we were doing things the best we could. Then I inherited another site in another state, and like almost everything was on paper. And we had like lots more employees to do everything manually. So this was, I wanted to make the change because I saw it was more efficient, but I had to also help them to see what is it that we're going to do instead that's going to add value. But I also had to, in this, I had to allow them to come up with these things, right? I had to inspire them. I had to say, whatever, you're a part of this team. I want you to feel inspired about what you're doing. I want you to see a better future. And you can be a part of making these changes. But you come up, I'll give you some ideas, but you decide, right? Because I want you to feel like you own this. Okay, so part of what we're seeing in all of these things is that life is complicated, organizations are complicated, people are complicated, and there's always not a clear answer. But again, when you have frameworks that can help you, right, to see maybe it's other people in the department that need to feel all these things too, and it's not just Rachel that needs to feel that. Yeah.
Just one thing, one of the things that, if you talk about this idea of love and respect, and that, if this person doesn't fit, if they just really don't fit in the department, part of that is to help them realize where they would fit.
Yeah.
And I've had to work with employees who wanted to go a direction that the county just wasn't able to go.
Yeah.
And I had to work with them to say, well, let's find you a job somewhere else, and I'll help you find that
Absolutely.
job, right?
Yeah.
To find you where you're gonna be happy, right? And so
Yeah.
it isn't always necessarily they have to conform or we have to conform. Sometimes it's best that we need to see where else you could work that would fulfill your needs and allow us to do what we need to do.
Yeah. So having conversations with employees about their development and their future and saying, this isn't the right fit, but that's not bad. You're learning about who you are, and you've added some value to this organization. We need to find what the right thing for you is and help them to get there. Otherwise, all these things will suffer, right? They're not going to be happy there. Okay. The mind of leadership. The leadership process. So this is where rubber hits the road, right? So this is, when we talked about the definition, that it's about mobilizing people in a process of action, learning, and change. The mind of leadership is about getting work done. It's about doing things. So we have 3 phases that we use here. So first, and we've talked about this a little bit already, initiate is identifying problems and opportunities for improvement. Seeing that, hey, we could do this better. We could do this in a different way. It's also going and some of you have brought this up. What's the context? Who are all the stakeholders? And going out and saying, I want to make this change, and I think it'll add value to what we're doing, but how does that impact all of the other stakeholders? And as you do that, the vision of this change you want to make changes. But in that, you also build relationships that allows you to now, okay, I've got a better vision of how we can make things, how we can make this change. Now we have teams, and we can mobilize those teams and set a direction for them. And then, with that vision in mind, we empower them to do the work. We say, here are the resources you need. What's the number one resource people need in order to get their work done?
Working computer.
Time! It's time! But yeah, it's a working computer. They were throwing daggers at John. But provide them with the resources, the direction, the encouragement, and then continue to follow up and make sure that they're staying the course. And there's some more description of that on there. I kind of added some more bullet points. Okay, so this is the last situation. You are the leader of a department. The broader organization you belong to is disconnected. The distinct departments operate largely by themselves with little or no coordination between leaders. This leads to several problems, some obvious, but most are hard to see, such as inconsistent experience for customers, duplicated efforts, and any necessary coordination is done in an unhealthy competitive spirit, such as hoarding resources, positioning for personal advantage. Okay, let's just take 3 minutes on this. What are you gonna do? So here's the all organizations are the same. And I'm describing things that I've seen. I'm not such a attacking you guys. I have seen this and so, but it's not always obvious. And then when you read it, you're like,
So that's my answer on all three, is just communication, communication. It's without it. The brands stuff, I watched it. There was a little bit of that.
But it was open dialogue. Open
Otherwise, you're not keeping it that way. Set it up, way all are great.
Did you not just make it lunch? Okay, good. So it was like almost like garbage about fuel sucked vehicles and pristine, overly costly. And it fits your mini bike in the back. You've got a mini bike. If you put it in the back of that truck. You borrowed something from Dale's truck to throw in there.
See this communication you have going.
Travis, sit down. I'm just kidding.
okay. Okay, so I had a couple of people ask, are you describing us?
That's what I was gonna.
And I said all of these things are things that I've seen multiple times in multiple organizations. They are just common, right?
Yeah, but it's supposed to be the assessor's office.
They are things that we see everywhere. And so I'm not picking on you guys. I'm just sharing things that I see that are very common, right? So how do situations like this come about?
No communication.
Okay, a lack of communication. What do you mean?
No communication between like leadership, department to department, with the employees.
Okay. So lack of communication between, so over here we had, well, we should have the same objectives and goals, right? We should have the same vision. And that's often thing, right, is that, the vision falls apart at some point.
Yeah,
You
it's,
say-
everybody wants different things and has their own vision, and nobody can agree because they can't communicate,
Yep, yep.
can't get it together.
Yeah. Okay, so you're a person here who you're basically going to be interacting with your peers, and you see this problem. What are you going to do?
I think Holly nailed it on the head, communicate. Like
Okay.
each one of these has a problem that needs solved. And then your live framework stuff, love, inspiration, expression, all of this requires a great deal of communication.
Yep.
Like if you have.
And the right communicate, because you could
Yeah.
communicate that they're dumb.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But if.
I like no means
More communication.
Yeah.
How dumb they are, the better.
No, everybody works so much better if everything is lined out.
Yep.
Like when you buy a house, you communicate everything, but you put it all in writing. When you buy a car, everything that you want to do and do properly, you communicate with. Things that when any problem arises, 99% of the time it's due to miscommunication or lack thereof.
Yeah.
All of these are fixed by proper or loving communication.
Yep. What else?
Confidence as a leader.
Okay.
You know, and everyone has a job, and maybe they're not confident in the job they're doing, so they're hoarding all the information, making themselves look, better at it, or thinking that's the
Yeah.
projection.
Yep.
But, just kind of building confidence as leaders, like, no, you don't need to know everything. You just need to help lead those that can aid you with everything else that you don't know.
Okay, so there's something about setting a vision and giving people a direction and letting them go and just say, hey, keep me updated on what's going on, but I don't need to be in everything. Okay. What else? Is this an easy situation? It's very complicated, right? So the leader may, if they're using the Mind of Leadership framework and the Heart of Leadership, then maybe they're going and they're building relationships and they're talking to people about and learning what's important and seeing where people are getting stuck on things and finding common ground that they can then create a vision of, well, hey, what if we change this and this and this, and building common consensus with everyone and helping to build that, so then they can mobilize into a team that says, well, why don't we have monthly meetings or quarterly meetings where we discuss these things, and we can have cross-functional or cross-department collaboration on different projects, and we can go to customers and find out, why is this, what can we do to make this experience better for you across the board? Why do I have to fill out this form for this organization and this one for this one? And it's all the same information. How can we make that easier? So you go and you start talking to people and understand them so that you can then create that vision together and make the changes.
Just
Yeah.
one thing to point out though, you mentioned leadership is work.
Yeah.
This isn't a one-time thing. You gotta do it constantly. Once you start, you never stop till the day you leave the organization. Because new people are gonna come in, other people are going to have ideas. I have a lot of folks that I work with that they think it's a one-time thing. We'll all get together, and then 6 months later, we're drifting back apart again, right? And it's like, once you start, you don't stop.
It's that entropy thing, right? You gotta put energy in the system, otherwise it will decay. Okay, I'm gonna go through a few things. What happens when you do not have the soul, heart, and mind of leadership within an organization? We have what we call two paradigms. The power over paradigm, which is about having power over people, which is, or the new paradigm of leadership, a power through approach. It's about control, compliance, coercive rules and procedures versus action, learning, change, initiative, enabling principles. When you do not focus on these things, then you get moral failures within organizations. You get fraud, you get lying, you get a loss of human potential. People that have abilities and skills that they can share go overlooked. They don't have the opportunity to do those things. And you have a stifling of change and innovation, which is why the organization exists, is to create value and to always be creating more value. A couple of weeks ago, my son, he's in first grade at J.R. Smith, and he threw up all over the carpet. And my wife said, well, why didn't you go to the garbage can? I'm not allowed to get out of my chair. Okay. We're taught from very little, you comply with these rules. You do this. Okay. When there is darkness in organizations, pride, contempt, cynicism, selfishness, dishonesty, discrimination, harassment, all these things lead to a loss of human potential, to moral failures, to a stifling of change and innovation. As leaders, we are to uphold values and make sure that they exist within organizations. It's not easy work. There's always a continuum of that. You can't completely eradicate it, but we want to try and get people more to the new paradigm. Okay, when we focus on soul, heart, and mind, we get thriving people, elevated purpose, and increased productivity within organizations. And then going back to what can you do? How can you create value in your organization? What parts of the leading through paradigm can you use? Because we don't have any time, I'll tell you. You can do all of these things. You can help your organization to live values and principles that will help create more value. You can live the heart of leadership and make people within the organization feel like they're using the best parts of themselves to make things better. And you can see problems and opportunities and use the mind of leadership to make things better. Now, these are the things that we are striving to teach your leaders, but it needs to permeate the entire organization because the leaders, they can't do it all by themselves. And so that is the purpose that we're doing this. I think that's it. That's all I got. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Everybody, thank you so much for coming. Does anybody have any questions that they want to know what time it is?
Yeah, ask me some questions.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes. Does anybody have any questions that they want to talk about?
I'll throw something that's not really a question.
Yeah.
Having been around for like most of my life in Wasatch County organization, it is interesting to see, and I love Mike Davis, so nobody take this the wrong way. The shift in leadership has been, I think, beneficial for the employees. I see a lot more spark than I used to, just from some small changes that have taken place because of these tools.
Yeah.
And a big thing is that communication
Yeah.
amongst department heads and employees.
Yep.
I see it coming from the top down now, and I think.
Good job, Dustin.
Exactly. It's fun to watch.
You know, I'll speak in behalf
See
of
what?
Dustin on that one, and to kind of set the philosophy of that one, we do appreciate that, because there does need to be work from the top down as well as work from the bottom up to be able to build that culture. But I do feel strongly that wherever we are at, we stand on the shoulders that went before us, that because of the work that did before, allows us to be able to go to the next level. And so as we talk about that transition from even Mike to Dustin,
Which I love.
I agree.
It's just been fun.
Because in some of the conversations we have, we realize there are things we're able to do today because of choices that were made yesterday.
Exactly.
And I think that philosophy, that can be a philosophy we have wherever we're at. We're not hurting the people who went before us by making change. When we sit there and say we could do better, we're not saying the people before us did poorly, but we're saying we're now at a place we can improve. And as we talk about that culture, if you haven't looked at it recently, go on County Connect and look at our value statements. Those are the things that we've identified as an organization, a culture that we want to become, and that we want everybody. Because there are things, I mean, I've been in organizations from the bottom, from the frontline employees to the top of an organization, and realized that change is not implemented by one person, but change is by everybody coming together and moving forward. And when we take a look at where we are as Wasatch County, we are a great organization, but we can be more. And we can do, and we can stand on the shoulders of the people that went before us and become more and do more. And that's what we want to be able to do as an organization.
And this is indicative of the power of knowledge, right? So I'm sure that the last county manager was an excellent person. And,
Amazing.
But you have somebody who comes in and they say, well, I've seen other things, and I've been learning things, right? Same thing with you guys within your departments. As you guys go, yeah, I want to make things different. I want to make things better. Go out there and get the knowledge, right?
Be a Rachel.
Be a Rachel, yeah.
Well, and this framework allows us to be able to do so. As we work on our soul, we create power of influence of other people. As we are able to do that ourselves, we create power of influence. As we work on our heart, we build our relationships that gives us more power to be able to change. And then when we work on our mind, we give us the knowledge that we need to be able to implement the good change that is lasting. And so again, this creates a framework that we can have those conversations as we talk in the future about potential change. Because again, we using the example of Rachel. Rachel's great, she's got great ideas, but she does need to build those relationships and build that credibility. And we do that through the heart, soul, and mind of leadership. And again, using the example of leadership of not the big L, the little L. That everybody in the organization is a leader. Any questions?
Can we get some copies of your slides? Get out of the
Yeah, I'll send them to Heber.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. On your way out, we still have some pizza. Grab some pizza to go. I heard a great idea. Grab some pizza for your boss. Take it in. To kind of tell
Maybe a few others.
Travis, you've been a great change to the assessment